You know the feeling of pulling into a parking lot 20 minutes before an appointment. You sit there, the engine idling, or maybe you turn it off and just stare at the dashboard. You're scrolling through your phone, but you're not really processing anything. You're just waiting for that precise moment when it becomes socially acceptable to walk inside, not too early that it's awkward, but certainly not a second too late. To the rest of the world, you're just a reliable person. You're the one who can be counted on. You're disciplined, professional, and respectful. But inside that car, there's a quiet, humming tension that most people never see. It's a feeling that being on time is actually being late, and being early is the only way to breathe. In our culture, we spend a lot of time talking about the psychology of chronic lateness. We analyze the procrastinators and the disorganized. But we rarely look at the person who is always, without fail, 15 minutes early. We assume it's a virtue. We assume it's just who they are. But when you look closer, excessive punctuality often has very little to do with the clock. It's actually a deeply ingrained survival strategy, a way of managing an internal world that feels like it's constantly on the verge of slipping out of control. If you are one of these people, you know that the buffer you build into your day isn't just about traffic or finding a parking spot, it's a psychological shock absorber. When you're early, you're buying yourself a sense of safety. Because for you, the idea of walking into a room late isn't just an inconvenience. It feels like a moral failing. It feels like an exposure. This behavior often starts long before we have a job or a schedule to keep. It usually takes root in our identity. Many early people grew up in environments where being noticed for the wrong reasons felt dangerous. Perhaps you had a parent who was unpredictable, or maybe the expectations placed on you were so high that perfection was the only way to avoid criticism. In those environments, you learn a very specific lesson. If I can control the variables, I can control the outcome. Punctuality becomes the ultimate variable you can control. You can't control how people will react to you, you can't control the difficulty of the meeting, and you can't control the weather, but you can control exactly when your feet hit the pavement in front of that building. That predictability creates a temporary shield against anxiety. It's a way of saying, if I am perfectly prepared, nothing can catch me off guard. But here is where the pattern starts to weigh on you, because this isn't just a habit, it's a manifestation of high-functioning anxiety. To the outside world, you look calm and composed, but that composure is fueled by a constant mental rehearsal. You aren't just driving to a location, you are simulating every possible thing that could go wrong. A car accident, a missed turn, a flat tire. By being 20 minutes early, you've defeated those possibilities. And yet, that victory doesn't actually make the anxiety go away. It just moves it. Now, instead of worrying about being late, you're sitting in your car or standing in a hallway, feeling a different kind of exposure. You're early, which means you're the first one there. You have to navigate the empty space, you have to wait. And for someone who uses activity and control to feel safe, waiting can be its own kind of torture. And here's where it gets interesting. We often think being early is an act of respect for others. We tell ourselves, I value their time. And while that may be true on the surface, the real reason we do it isn't usually about the other person at all. It's about us. It's about the unbearable discomfort of being perceived as messy. For many early people, lateness is synonymous with being seen as too much or not enough. It's a fear of the judgment that happens in those 30 seconds when you walk through a door and everyone turns to look at you. If you're already there, sitting in your seat, you're invisible in a way that feels safe. You've blended into the environment before the environment even began. In this way, excessive punctuality is often a form of preemptive people-pleasing. You are managing other people's perceptions of you before they even have a chance to form them. You are ensuring that no one can ever point a finger at you. You are becoming beyond reproach. But the cost of being beyond reproach is that you can never truly relax. You are always on duty. You are always calculating the distance between where you are and where you should be. This creates a specific type of identity, the reliable one. It's a noble title, but it's also a heavy one. When your identity is built on never failing, never being late, and never being the cause of a delay, you leave no room for your own humanity. You don't allow yourself the grace of a mistake. You begin to see your own needs, like an extra 10 minutes of sleep or a slow cup of coffee, as threats to your safety. You might notice this pattern bleeding into other areas of your life too. It's the way you answer emails the second they arrive. It's the way you over-prepare for a casual conversation. It's the way you feel a spike of irritation when other people are late, not because it actually ruins your schedule, but because their carelessness feels like a personal affront to the rigid rules you've used to keep your own life together. Their lateness reminds you of the chaos you're working so hard to avoid. It's important to recognize that this isn't a flaw you need to fix. It's a protection. At some point in your life, being this way kept you safe. It kept you out of trouble, it earned you praise, and it gave you a sense of mastery over a world that felt overwhelming. It's a sophisticated coping mechanism that society just happens to reward. But there is a difference between choosing to be punctual and being compelled to be early. One is a tool you use, the other is a rule that uses you. When you're compelled, you aren't actually present in your life. You're always 10 minutes ahead of yourself, living in a future that hasn't happened yet, trying to fix problems that don't exist. Understanding this pattern doesn't mean you have to start showing up late, it just means noticing the why. It means acknowledging that the tightness in your chest when you hit a red light isn't about the red light. It's about a deep-seated need to feel in control of your environment. When you start to see the anxiety behind the punctuality, the pattern begins to lose its power over you. You realize that your value isn't actually tied to the clock. You realize that the people who care about you won't suddenly stop respecting you if you walk in exactly at 9 o'clock instead of 8:45. It was never really about the time. It was about the belief that if you were perfect enough, you would be safe. Once you see that, you can start to decide which parts of that buffer are actually serving you, and which parts are just keeping you in a state of constant, quiet alarm. Awareness doesn't change the schedule, but it changes how you feel while you're waiting. It allows you to step out of the car, take a breath, and realize that you are allowed to exist, even when you aren't ahead of everyone else. It was never a random habit. It was a pattern. And seeing it is the first step toward moving through the world with a little less weight on your shoulders. If you recognize yourself in this, maybe it's time to look at the other virtues you carry that might actually be silent burdens. Understanding why we move the way we do is how we finally learn to stand still. Would you like me to develop a similar script focusing on the psychology of the over-explainer, or perhaps the hyper-independent personality pattern?